Hello everyone, my name is Sarafi and I'm happy to meet you all. And today we are going to be playing Firewall Dragon Darkfluid. This deck is so much fun. I had a lot of fun playing it on stream. I was able to get up from DL12 to DL16 in just 2 hours. And, the deck pretty consistently is able to summon Firewall Dragon Darkfluid, which is the goal, and that's a lot of fun. The lists that I've seen people playing are super focused around trying to exploit the skill, using cards like Different Dimension, Reincarnation, and a few other things. I don't know how popular that sort of strategy is going to be, because those cards are old and a lot of people don't have them, and it also kind of is really based on you getting lucky and opening cards that you're not able to search, and if you don't do that, then you kind of run into a brick wall. So I'd rather make a more consistent and interesting deck that people have access to just with the cards they bought recently. I think that's the greater share of my audience. Anyway, so let's talk about the skill and what we can do here. The skill is called Darkfluid Link. You can only use the skill's second and third effects once per duel. You cannot normal summon or special summon monsters except Cyberse monsters. Standard. If your extra deck contains a Link 5, repeal one Firewall monster or one Ritual monster in your hand, then banish Cyberse Magician, Cyberse Clock Dragon, Cyberse Quantum Dragon, Firewall Exceed Dragon, and Firewall Dragon from outside your deck. Add one Signet spell from your deck to your hand. If you activate this effect on the second turn onward, add one Signet rollback from outside your deck to your hand. If you special summon Decode Talker during this duel, shuffle up to 5 cards from your graveyard and among your banished cards into the deck. That's pretty fun, pretty cool. It does let you recover a lot of options and allows you to get more monsters into your extra deck that you can use for follow-up. Although I don't typically use the third effect all that much, just because it doesn't really fit the deck all that well. The card that we add from outside the deck is called Signet Rollback, and it's a very powerful card. Target one of your banished Cyberse monsters and special summon it. During your main phase, if your life points are 2,000 or less, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target 2 Cyberse monsters that are banished, and add them to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. It's pretty cool. I've only used the banish effect of Signet Rollback once, which I used to get the Cyberse Magician in my hand so I could Ritual Summon. That was actually pretty cool. It won me the game. But usually I'm not lower than 2,000 life points. I've either won the game or I've lost the game at that point. But Rollback basically lets you get a free special summon from your banished zone, which is really useful. And people try to double down on that by playing Different Dimension Reincarnation and Dimension Distortion, so you can get as many of these powerful monsters onto the field without summoning them as possible. That is broken and really annoying, and I don't think it's all that good. The rollback does give you Quantum Dragon, and Quantum Dragon is an extremely powerful card. It can also give you Firewall Dragon if you want to focus on that, but only on turn 2. So I feel like Quantum Dragon is the much better card on turn 2, but Firewall sometimes has its uses if you don't want to get rid of cards, if you need to get rid of cards before the battle phase, or you need to get rid of cards in the graveyard. Either way. You would never summon any of the other ones, though. Okay. For the main deck, we are playing Cyberse Sage. This is an ultra rare in the box. I do apologize. You could otherwise completely skip the box to play this deck, but Sage is just so good. Wow, is this card good? I'm sorry. I know there's one of it in the box. You will get it eventually. That card is insane. Try it. Cyberse Sage, this is a Cyberse Ritual Tuner monster, level 1. You can Ritual Summon this card with Signet Ritual. During your main phase, you can Fusion Summon one Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing materials mentioned on it from your field or graveyard, including a Cyberse monster. If this card is sent to the graveyard as Synchro material, you can target a Cyberse monster or a Ritual spell in your graveyard and add it to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. This card is done. You search it off of Witch, along with your Signet Ritual. You summon it. You then Fusion Summon by banishing 2 cards from your graveyard. Then you will Synchro Summon Cyberse Sage into another monster, and then you can immediately turn around and link all your monsters off into Darkfluid, and Sage puts a Ritual monster, a Synchro monster, and a Fusion monster in the graveyard by itself. As long as you can make Sage and you have 2 monsters in your graveyard, then you are making a 3-material Darkfluid. It's 3 counter Darkfluid. It's crazy. So the only thing that it doesn't do very well is give you an Exceed summon. It's kind of actually hard to. I've tried. I really have tried, and I just have a lot of trouble actually making an Xyz with this deck, even though most of my monsters are level 4, because by the time I'm ready to make an Xyz, I just don't have 2 spots on the board. You have to have 2 spots on the board to synchro summon, you have to have 2 spots on the board to fusion summon, and you can't, or sorry, to Xyz summon, and then you can't fusion summon last, because you have to use Sage to fusion summon, and Sage is your tuner monster, so you have to fusion summon before you synchro summon, so it's awkward. Alright, now let's go ahead and let's take a look at the other cards. This card is insane. You could play this at 2, just to make sure that you don't brick on the skill. I know that some people are playing Paladin of Storm Dragon to make up for the fact that most people don't have 2 copies of Sage yet. That's bad. Paladin of Storm Dragon is not a good card. Even if you're playing Firewall Phantasm, which I'm not, then you still would not play the Paladin of Storm Dragon. If you want to make the skill more, the Cyber Switch line more consistent to make sure that you don't brick on one of your copies of Signet Ritual or Cyber Sage to allow you to always use Cyber Switch, because you need both these cards in the deck to use Cyber Switch. You can play 2 copies of Sage and 2 copies of Ritual, but Sage is like the only one that's worth it. Okay. Link Slayer, if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Once per turn, you get to discard up to 2 cards, target that many spells or traps on the field, and destroy them. Link Slayer is amazing going second. This card will be a fantastic card. It's a starter, it's an extender. It allows you to remove cards from your opponent's side of the field, and your opponent will usually just burn their spells and traps in response to this card even hitting the field. You don't even usually have to discard to even activate its effect, because your opponent's just going to respond to you summoning this card by activating their cards anyway. And that's fine. You just get your free removal off the field before you've really started your turn. Since Defensor is kind of like a card that you really need to be on the field, Link Slayer is a good way to make sure that Defensor does not get interrupted. This card is not free, but you should play it at 2 anyway. Defensor, this is a card that you do have to pay money for 1 copy of. I'm sorry, it's a good card. You can make this deck with only 2 of them if you really, really want to. I wouldn't. The skill does require you to have a Firewall monster in your hand. If you're not playing 3 copies of Defensor, you will probably play 1 copy of Firewall Phantasm instead, so that you could just have more Firewall cards in your deck, because you need them. I don't think that's good. Defensor, if this card is sent to the graveyard as link material for the link summon of a Cybers monster, you can special summon 1 Firewall monster from your deck, except Defensor. You cannot special summon monsters a turn you activate this effect except Cybers. That doesn't matter, because the skill already prevents us from doing that. If a Firewall monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. You can only use each effect once per turn. Defensor is insane. This is a really, really good card. It allows you to easily summon your Firewall Guardian from your deck, and essentially Defensor becomes a 1-card Link 3, except that you have Cyber Switch as your Link 2, which means that you're getting even more value, even more draws, even more cards that you can play, even more extension. It's actually crazy. So Defensor is more like a 1-card Link 4, because you normal summon Defensor, you link it off, you make you normal summon Defensor, you make Link Disciple, you special summon Guardian. Guardian go into Cyber Switch, then Guardian comes back and it triggers Cyber Switch. Cyber Switch draws you your Cyber Sage. Then you can Ritual Summon with Cyber Sage into... and then when you Ritual Summon, you get to also use Cyber Switch's effect to bring back another monster from your graveyard. And then that is a 2, 3, 4, 5... Yeah. As long as you have 1 card in your hand to tribute for the Cyber Sage, that is a 1-card Link 5. So it's really, really good. Speaking of Guardian, if this card is sent to the graveyard as material for the Link summon of a Cybers monster, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. That's insane. So, Defensor, link off into a Link 1. Guardian, link off into a Link 2. Comes back, link off into a Link 3. 1-card Link 3 without you doing anything, and then because of which it goes even further. When an attack is declared involving your Link monster and an opponent's monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard, negate the attack, and if you do until the end of the turn, the original attack of the opponent's monster becomes 0. Also, it is unaffected by other cards' effects except its own. You can only use each effect of Firewall Guardian once per turn. Okay, so Guardian is kind of a weird card because it negates the attack, but it also makes the monster's attack points 0. So kind of what you want to do with this card is you want to attack with a Link monster that's weak, and then attack with a Link monster that's strong. We do have the option of doing that with the 2nd copy of Link Disciple. You can basically, if your opponent summons a Link monster, then you can banish. You can make another copy of Link Disciple, attack with the Link Disciple to make your opponent's attack points 0, and then kill them with Darkfluid. That's really, really good. It's really, really hard, and it does require your opponent to also be playing Link monsters, which they might not necessarily be doing. But if they are, then it's an easy way to pop off. The first effect is the really important one, though. Microcoder. A lot of people play this card at more than one. I don't know why. I mean, it's a good card if you are making anything other than Decode Talker, but I don't think that you should. The extra deck is pretty tight with this deck, so I would just go ahead and play one copy of Microcoder, and if you draw it, then you can use it to make your Decode Talker pretty easily, but Decode Talkers are not that great of a card, so. If a Cyberse monster you control will be used as link material for Code Talker, you can also use this card in hand as material. If this card is sent from the hand or the field to the graveyard as material for the link summon of a Code Talker monster, you can either add one Signet spell or trap from your deck to your hand, or if this card was on the field, you can add one level 4 Cyberse type monster instead. You can only use this effect once per turn. Note that that is level 4, not level 4 or lower. Interesting idea, and you can use this to draw your Signet Crosswipe, so pretty good. Cyberse Converter. If all monsters you control are Cyberse, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Cyberse Converter once per turn this way. This card is important because it is a link 2 that can special summon. Sorry, it's a level 2 that can special summon itself, and that is perfect for your Sage because the cheapest synchro monster we have is a level 3. So 1, 2, 3. Signet Mining. Just send one card from your hand to the graveyard, add one level 4 or lower Cyberse type monster from your deck to your hand. We are also playing Signet Crosswipe, which tributes a Cyberse monster to target one card on the field and destroy it. You can use either one of these cards with the skill, but you need them in the deck to still activate the skill. So if you open both your Crosswipe and your Mining, then the skill will force you to draw your Ritual, which means that you can't use Witch. That's pretty bad. And then also if you really brick and you open all 3 copies, one copy of Signet Mining, one copy of Signet Crosswipe, and one copy of Signet Ritual, you can't use the skill at all because you don't have any Signet spells to add to your hand. So that might encourage you to play other cards, maybe another copy of Signet Mining, maybe another copy of Signet Crosswipe, maybe another copy of Signet Ritual. I don't feel like adding more bricks to your deck is a good idea. But if you want to feel like your deck is more consistent because you're not whiffing on activating the skill, then that's fine. You will find that the deck loses more often though because you will end up with more cards that you can't play. Signet Ritual is just a ritual spell. If you control no monsters, you can banish this card and one ritual monster from the graveyard to special summon 2 tokens. You cannot activate this effect the turn this card is sent to the graveyard. I bet you didn't even know that effect existed because you've probably never seen it happen. But, hey, it's a free link too. Burial from a different dimension. Target up to 3 monsters that are banished and returned to the graveyard. That is not once per turn. This card is good specifically because it allows you to cheat your Darkfluid counters. Darkfluid only cares about monsters being in the graveyard, not actually being summoned. So you can just take the monsters that were banished, dump them into the graveyard, and then you can just get free counters on your Darkfluid. That is a good effect, and it is possible that you want to play this card at more than one. I only have one copy of it. If you have more than one copy of it, you might experiment with playing this card at 2 or 3. It is pretty good. Dimension Distortion. You can activate this card if there are no cards in your graveyard. Select one removed from play monster and special summon it on your side of the field. So Dimension Distortion is Monster Reborn and allows you to get back your Firewall Exceed Dragon or your Firewall Dragon or your Quantum Synchro Dragon. All good. These are all good effects. Again, this card is harder to use than Different Dimension Reincarnation, but it is a card that is a neutral rarity card that most of you probably have 3 copies of, so I'm assuming that you will have this and not DDR, which is why I put this in the deck. If you do have DDR, you can play DDR instead of this. It does cost you a card from your hand, and it's also easily interruptible because your opponent can simply MST the card, the equip spell, but it does allow you to play the card as something other than the very first card of your turn. So pros and cons. Lastly, we're playing Compulsory Evacuation Device. This is just good generic removal. If you are playing the version of the deck that focuses on summoning Firewall Dragon on turn 1 with the equip spell, then Compulsory Evacuation Device becomes less useful and less relevant because it's basically the same thing as Firewall Dragon. I still think that Compulse is a really good card to have just because the deck requires you to open a Firewall monster. We simply don't have enough of them. So there are going to be situations where you simply can't play the game. And in those situations, Compulse is the best card you could use. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with the deck the way it is. For the extra deck, we have Duplexer Chimera. Requires 2 Cyber-type monsters. Once per turn, you contribute 1 Cyber-type monster. Spells and traps and their effects cannot be activated during the battle phase of this turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Cybernet Fusion and 1 Cyber monster in your graveyard, accept this card and add it to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. So Duplexer Chimera is a great card. It allows you to basically turn your opponent's spells and traps during the battle phase, which is very useful to you. As long as you can get it out for free, which Sage lets you do. So, yes, there will often be times where you can make Sage, use it to make Duplexer Chimera, and then you will still have enough monsters on the field between the Sage coming back from the graveyard off of the Integrator and the Integrator itself that you can tribute the Duplexer Chimera and then use Decode Talker, Sage, and Integrator to make Darkfluid, and you'll be fine. So this card is really, really strong. Cyber's Integrator requires 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuners. That is exactly Sage and Converter. If this card is Synchro Summon, you can special summon 1 Cyber's tuner monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except Cyber's. So this lets you get back your Sage. However, it's important to note that you don't always want to use this effect. Sage is the only tuner in your graveyard. It's the only tuner in your deck. If you cannot link summon Darkfluid using Sage and Integrator and everything else on your field, then you want to leave Sage in your graveyard so that you can get Darkfluid counters off of it. So, for example, if you have Duplexer Chimera, you have Decode Talker, and you have Integrator, and it's your turn 1, not your turn 2, so you don't really want to use Duplexer Chimera's effect, then you would leave Sage in the graveyard because Decode Talker can only be treated as a Link 3, not a Link 2. So you would have to, if you summoned the Sage back, you would not be able to make Darkfluid with all the monsters. The 3 monsters that are not Link monsters only add up to a Link 3, and Decode Talker would only be able to be paired with 2 monsters, not 3 monsters. So if you made Darkfluid in that situation, you would leave a monster on the field, which wouldn't be particularly useful to you, and you would end up with 1 less counter. Be careful with how Integrator works with the deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can draw a card, which is really nice. Darkfluid, this is the entire reason we are playing the deck. It requires 3 or more effect monsters. It's a Link 5, 3,000 attack points. If this card is Link Summon, you can place counters on this card up to the number of different types of Cyber monsters in your graveyard. Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, and Exceeds. This card gains 2,500 attack points for each counter on it during the battle phase only. So that you can't Catapult Turtle it. When your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you can remove 1 counter from this card, negate the activation. Also, if this effect was activated between this card's attack declaration and the end of the damage step, this card can make another attack in a row. That is a weird phrasing, but essentially, if you attack into a card that floats, like, for example, the Dark Magicians, you can negate the Dark Magician's ability to replace themselves with Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, and then you get to attack again. Pretty nice. The effect to negate monster effects does not destroy the monster, but is also not once per turn, which is really, really good. So you want to try and make Darkfluid with 4 counters on turn 1, and then you get 4 monster negates, which is better than Raid Raptors, although they don't destroy the monster, which makes it a little bit worse than Raid Raptors. Still, really, really fun, and I had a lot of fun playing this deck. Decode Talker, Link 3, needed for the skill. Which, if a monster is special summoned to a zone, this card points to. You can banish 1 spell from your graveyard to add 1 Cyber-type Ritual monster and 1 Signet Ritual from your deck to your hand. So you have to have both Sage and Ritual in the deck to use this effect, and you also have to have a spell in your graveyard, but that's why we're playing 3, 6, 7, and also why the skill draws you a spell. The skill always draws you a spell, so you'll always have a spell option. During your main phase, if this effect was activated this turn, you can target 1 level 4 or lower Cyber monster in your graveyard and special summon it. That's really nice. It doesn't have to be the zone that she points to, so you just have to make sure that you remember to activate the effect because it's not going to activate automatically like the first effect does. Really good. That gives you extra materials for your ritual summons, which you need. Honeybots. Neither player can target monsters this card points to with card effects, and those monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. Great. These are both very beneficial effects to have, and you can make Honeybot along with Darkfluid and have it Darkfluid point to Honeybot so that Honeybot protects Darkfluid and therefore Dark Fluid can't be targeted, which is great. Then you also have Defensor, which prevents Firewall Darkfluid from being destroyed. Both those effects together make it really hard for your opponent to out it. Lastly, we're playing Link Disciple, which is just a Link one. Alright, let's take a look at the replay. Okay, we're going first against Tachyon. And we opened our Dimension Distortion, Signet Mining, Link Slayer, and Firewall Defensor. That is crazy. We have the skill because we have a Firewall monster. We have Signet Mining, so we have Search. We have Link Slayer as a free extender, and we have our Monster Reborn effect. Let's see what we can do with all this. We start off by activating the skill so that we can reveal our Defensor. We draw our Crosswipe for the skill. Now first we're going to special summon Link Slayer, because Link Slayer requires that we have no monsters at all, but it doesn't put any cards in our graveyard, so we can still play Dimension Distortion afterwards. Activate Dimension Distortion, bring back the Xyz monster, because that's the hardest monster to put in our graveyard. Now we summon the Firewall Defensor, and we link it off into Link Disciple. That allows us to special summon Guardian from the deck, and we link those two off into Witch. Guardian special summons itself back, and Witch will banish the Dimension Distortion to draw both Sage and the Ritual spell. Then we are going to link the Exceed monster off with the Witch to make Decode Talker. Now that does mean that we don't get to special summon a monster from the graveyard with Witch's effect. But the problem is, there wasn't really a way for me to get space on the board. So I just went ahead and let it go. But you could have extended more if for example, there wasn't really a way to do that. I'm sorry. I mean, you could have, I guess you could have like linked to the 3 monsters down here into Decode Talker under the Witch, and then special summon that way, and that would have been an extra monster. But yeah, that's basically it. Activate Signet Ritual. Tribute the Firewall Guardian to ritual summon the Cyberse Sage. Now, Cyber Sage will activate its effect in just a moment, because first we're going to activate Signet Mining, discard the Signet Crosswipe to draw the converter that we need. Special summon converter, and we will synchro. We're going to synchro first. The reason we are going to synchro first is because we can then use the the monster's fusion material afterwards. So the reason why we are doing this, we're going to bring the Cyber Sage back, and Cyber Sage can still fusion summon afterwards because it just needs to be on the field. But now we can use the Link Slayer and the Cyberse Integrator to make Honeybot. And we want to do this while we have Decode Talker out so they can point to the middle. Alright, then we're going to activate Integrator's effect. We draw a card. Then we'll activate Cyber Sage's effect. We banish the 2 Link monsters from our graveyard to fusion summon Duplexer Chimera. Then we use Sage, Duplexer Chimera, and Decode Talker to make Firewall Dragon Darkfluid. Darkfluid has Firewall Exceed Dragon as the Xyz monster, Cyberse Integrator as the Synchro monster, Cyber Sage as the Ritual monster, and Duplexer Chimera as the Fusion monster. Therefore, it gains 4 counters. And there you go. So, for our turn 1, we have Honeybot pointing to Darkfluid. That means Darkfluid cannot be targeted by card effects, cannot be destroyed by battle, and because we have Defensor in the graveyard, it also can't be destroyed by card effects 1 time. Then it also has 4 monster negates. Pretty solid board, and we could have drawn 2. This is a monster that we returned from the graveyard, but we could have drawn a Compulsor, or maybe we could have drawn the Crosswipe if we had searched a different card from the skill. So there's potential for even more extension with all the plays that we had. It's our opponent's turn. They draw a card. They're going to activate the skill, draw their Nebula Dragon. Then they're going to use Nebula Dragon's effect, revealing the Galactic Spiral Dragon. We will negate that. So Nebula Dragon doesn't come out. The other monster doesn't come out. The opponent is going to activate Trade-In, pitch the Galactic Spiral Dragon to draw 2. They special summon the Schwarzschild Limit Dragon from their hand, but they don't have another level 8 that they can summon, so they just set 3 and they pass. So we know that the opponent had the Galactic Spiral. One of the cards in hand is Nebula Dragon. You know that card can't do anything else because it's already been negated once. Then there's 1 mystery card, and then 3 back row. This is a typical board for someone who has bricked or has been outed. So, you know, we did shut them down this time. We draw. We're going to normal summon the Cyberse Converter. The opponent is going to Book of Moon, their own monster. Because they can't Book of Moon any of our monsters. Battle, attack directly, lethal. They couldn't crack down our monster because it can't be targeted. They couldn't really do anything, really. They could have Ice Dragon's Prison, I guess. But other than that, like, there was not really any out here. So that's the power of this deck. That's the power of a consistent board of extenders. Lots of ways to summon from the graveyard. Lots of ways to cycle through your monsters. And Cyber Sage, which is a crazy good card. My name is Serafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.